Welcome to the Panthers Movie Den. Today's film is Martin Scorsese's 1990 crime drama, Goodfellas, starring Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Lorraine Bracco. For me personally, it's always funny to me how one of the only movies that I would say is possible in rivaling the two Godfathers is another gangster movie. And that being said, this is probably my favorite movie of all time for many reasons. First off, I would get into the writing. The movie was co-written by Scorsese and Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote Wise Guy, which the movie is based off of, that follows the real-life story. And the amount of memorable lines in this movie is in a league of its own, I think. Arguably the most quotable movie ever made, even improvised scenes like the sequence at the home of Tommy's mother, who's played by Scorsese's mother, are ingrained in my mind. And every time I watch it, I still feel like it's my first time watching it.
Goodfellas is definitely quite the movie, and I definitely agree with you, Joe. I would say this actually does rival The Godfather for being one of the best gangster movies. Or
See,
like,
I was saying best movies ever made. And I'm just saying it's kind of a weird coincidence. I don't know if you can call it really a coincidence, but it's kind of funny how they're both gangster movies.
In my personal opinion, it's not like my favorite movie of all time. But when it comes to like non-bias, I agree. It's definitely one of the greatest out there. From everything, character-wise, story-wise, it's just all mesmerizing to watch unfold. And this is actually the first movie I got on Steelbook. It is definitely a phenomenal movie, and it's something that I honestly can't get bored of.
I don't know how this happened, but this somehow makes my top 5 movies of all time, and that's just like from the first viewing. I kind of went into it knowing, alright, yeah, this is one of the greatest films of all time, but like, yeah, this is such an amazing film. It is insane how good the writing of this film is. It is nuts how good the writing is, the acting, especially from Ray Liotta, who kind of carried the film.
It's kind of weird with Ray Liotta because I don't know why he hasn't been in more things. It's kind of just Goodfellas and no other memorable parts. Other than, I know he's in Hannibal, which is the Ridley Scott Silence of the Lambs movie, but he hasn't really been in anything memorable, and Goodfellas was his breakout role, but it seemed to fall off right after that. But he's a very good actor. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, he does such a good job, and I don't know how, but like, his version of Henry Hill just kind of became one of my favorite movie characters of all time, just because like of how he goes from a small-time gangster, he rises then to the top, and then like he falls down in probably the most spectacular way I've like seen for a movie. I kind of gotta mention again the writing.
Yeah, and the directing just elevates the writing all the more. And after having watched this movie so many times, I think that this is the best directed movie I've ever seen, because the amount of videos I've seen and articles I've read on the making of this movie prove more and more how nobody else could have directed this movie. The energy, how it's so fast-paced, but how it hits hard when it starts to slow down, all shows Scorsese in his prime, in his experienced voice that has a background in gangster movies like his debut in Mean Streets, as well as his personal life experience. If you see some of his interviews where he talks about how many of his real-life experiences seeing real-life gangsters influenced the shooting of some of the scenes of the Copacabana, it really brings a realness and togetherness that the movie projects.
Going off of good writing, this is another perfect example of how you should open up a movie. Like right away, you know exactly what this movie's gonna be. You know what you're in for. It's a great combo, I think, the opening scene of showing and telling. It's a nice blend of both, where you see what's going on, and then you have Ray Liotta's narration in the background. All film students should take notes on this.
Yeah, the narration in this movie is also something that needs to be brought up, because a lot of movies use narration lazily, but this movie does not, and the narration is a character in and of itself, and it just brings out the character of Henry Hill even more, I think.
It's interesting because obviously it's the same character, but like you were saying, it feels like a whole nother thing on its own.
And I think just what you were saying in general about the opening scene, that was a really good decision, I think, to have that flash forward in time be at the beginning, because that is kind of the turning point, I think, personally, and what they were trying to say, at least, for Henry's character. Because after, I guess spoilers now, after they kill Billy Batts...
No more shines, Billy.
What?
I said no more shines. Maybe you didn't hear about it. You've been away a long time. They didn't go up there and tell you. I don't shine shoes anymore.
That's kind of the part where you see, like when they're still in the bar and Joe Pesci looks up to Ray Liotta, you can see that Henry is questioning what's going on.
Yeah.
And having that part of them burying him is probably the most critical part in the movie for his character at that time. So having that at the very beginning of the movie, I think showed that everything in his life was pretty inevitable at that point.
Also, I kind of want to bring this up because we talked about this with the Godfather audio, and one criticism I kind of have is that the audio can get like messed up like at times, like during the prison scene where Ray's talking with Karen, how the audio kind of gets messed up. And that was kind of something I was thinking about, especially with how we're talking about with The Godfather and how it's more slow-paced, but it has those small details that make it great, which I feel like a film like this doesn't have. Yeah, it makes up for it in a lot of different ways that The Godfather doesn't. Like, they both have their strengths. They both take down the gangster lifestyle, pretty much. That's kind of what I was thinking throughout the film, is just how the audio will sometimes get messed up, and it kind of feels like this is a great movie at face value, whereas if you dig deeper into the like something like The Godfather, you'll find like the small details that make it great. You could definitely say the same thing with Goodfellas. There's definitely like stuff there. I feel like it doesn't like hit those small details that'll just make it greater in a way.
I'm trying to envision that scene in the prison right now. Was it more that the audio was bad, or was it overdubs?
I think it might have just been like straight overdubs.
Yeah, it could be. It could be that because.
Or I was just kind of thinking of like how it was shot, and maybe just like because the microphone.
That's what I was saying. I don't know if it was shot because usually when movies are being made and there's a lot of people in a room, or like it's an arena with a lot of people, it's kind of awkward if you watch the behind the scenes stuff where it's just them talking and everybody else is quiet, and they add in all the people talking in the background, so it doesn't mess with the audio when they're actually making the movie or TV show. So I don't know, maybe in Goodfellas they had it all live audio, the people talking in the background, so maybe that messed it up. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that you can see how it might age a little bit, but it definitely doesn't, and I'm sure you agree with this, Nick, that it definitely doesn't hold back the movie as a whole.
Definitely not, no.
Yeah. In the movie, I think is, and I said this also in the Godfather episode, which is kind of funny also, just how much they kind of relate to each other, is that this is probably the best example, I think even more so than the Godfather, of making you care for terrible people as main characters.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's probably even more effective here, especially since Henry is a character that you can really understand as a viewer. And the fact that they do have that opening scene be that opening scene, and how they go into him being a kid, it kind of just puts you right into the setting also, and really lets you know who Henry is. So I think that's just all really well done.
All the supporting players are also just such fantastic characters, like Joe Pesci.
I would say Joe Pesci has the best performance in the movie. Yeah, the real life Henry Hill said that his performance is 90 to 95% accurate, and I completely believe that.
At least for me, he was the most mesmerizing to watch on screen because of just how crazy and unstable he is. It was just so captivating. Like, I just remember that one scene with Spider, and I remember just like it was almost eerie, if I could describe it, just how crazy this guy is.
What?
What? Where's my fucking drink? I asked you for a drink.
You wanted a drink?
I just asked you for a fucking drink.
No, I thought you said that you were all right, Spider.
No. What do you got me on a fucking pay no mind list, kid?
No, I thought I heard someone say something. Spider. I thought it was Henry.
You know you're a fucking mumbling, stuttering little fuck. You know that?
Yeah, that's another part where you see the turn of Henry's character.
I think like the turn of Henry's character is when Joe Pesci's character just gets whacked. It's such a sad scene because just kind of like how it's built up that like he's gonna be like a mob boss and like how he's gonna be congratulated and all that, and then it all just turns out to be a setup.
Yeah,
and then, like,
it's
he
also
dies.
even more sad because you look at Robert De Niro's character and he's kind of that middleman between kind of a more rooted life like Henry wants to have and used to have, and sort of just being fully engrossed in the gangster lifestyle, which Tommy DeVito was. So, yeah, that definitely makes it more sad when you look at it from Robert De Niro's character's perspective.
And also, that was like one of his only friends, too, in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, when you look at it, he doesn't have any real friends, really. I mean, even Paulie, he betrays Paulie, too, and he doesn't want they don't want any part of each other, really, at a certain point.
Paulie, I'm really sorry. I don't know what else to say. I know I fucked up.
Fucked up, yeah, you fucked up.
No, but I'm alright now. You know, I can be trusted now, Paulie. I'm clean. On my kids, I'm clean.
You looked in my eyes, you lied to me. You treated me like a fucking jerk. Like I was never nothing to you.
Paulie, after what you said, I couldn't come to you.
But I think the main thing I want to bring up about this movie is how and if it glorifies the gangster lifestyle. Because this is something that people always bring up. Same thing people sometimes say about The Godfather. What I say...
The Godfather definitely doesn't. The Godfather does not glorify the gangster lifestyle.
What I say about The Godfather and this is absolutely not, and you must have not watched the last act of the movie.
That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Because I always feel like that's one of the most ridiculous criticisms for any movie of that genre. I never think that they're glorifying it. I always feel that they're almost warning you, like, this is what's gonna happen. It's almost like an example of that lifestyle. And yeah, while it may seem fun or cool, whatever, it ultimately isn't. They show all the ugly parts that come with it, and there's some difficult scenes to watch in Goodfellas, and I don't think that's the intention. The intention's not like, hey, join us. Like, I'm pretty sure it's not that. I'm pretty sure it's like, you don't want to be in this.
Get out of here, Dewey.
What are y'all doing in here?
It's called cocaine, and you don't want no part of this shit.
Cocaine? What's it do?
It turns all your bad feelings into good feelings. It's a nightmare.
I'm thinking maybe I'd like to try me some of that cocaine.
Like you said, if you just sit and watch the movie, they kind of tell you, like, pretty much the whole message of it is, you don't want this lifestyle.
Nah, it's a happy ending. It's a happy ending.
I still love the life. And we were treated like movie stars with muscle. We had it all just for the asking.
Alright, Godfather, definitely not. Definitely not Godfather. Goodfellas, also definitely not, but like...
I think it's easier to see how people would say that about Goodfellas.
Yeah, it's easier to say it about Goodfellas, but also at the same time, the last act of Goodfellas literally just has the downfall of Henry Hill.
Yeah.
And like, that kind of just shows, don't be a gangster.
And I mean, not that like this movie isn't commended as one of the greatest movies of all time, but this is something that I do see a lot. That's why I bring it up. And you look at some other movies that absolutely glorify the gangster lifestyle. Like, I just watched this just because I heard so many bad things about it, and then I just wanted an opinion of my own. But if you watch Gotti, it's absolutely a glorification of the mobster lifestyle. It ends with them claiming John Gotti as a hero of this town. It's absolutely astonishing to me how people will not just look at Goodfellas and automatically think this is absolutely not glorifying the gangster lifestyle. And you look at every single other thing in the movie, it's something good that seems to be them on a high, and then something terrible happens. It's not exactly difficult to see interjections being made there in the story by the events that take place.
It's almost like it's the message of the movie.
Nah. But yeah, it really lets you into an insight of the characters' lives because they feel like their lives are that good. So that's kind of why Scorsese makes the movie feel like that. And that's the primary reason.
Kind of going off of that, what you're saying about like the high and low moments back to back. One of my favorite things about Goodfellas is the song choices and how it's so... Yeah, the soundtrack's amazing. They play one of my favorite songs of all time, which is Beyond the Sea. I just love it whenever like something's going well, like you hear like all this upbeat music, and then later on, when like all the cocaine stuff's happening, that's when you start hearing like more fast-paced music and everything. Yep. I love how cleverly Scorsese selected each song to like fit with whatever's going on. Everything's intentional. It's not just for the sake of having this song playing in the back. It's almost like part of the story itself. And that's what makes it work so well, that it's not just any random song. It fits perfectly with the situation that's going on. Arguably, that's what I would say is my favorite part about the whole movie.
Yeah, I agree. Every piece of music used in this fits perfectly into the tone and what's going on. And I think the best example is right at the beginning with Rags to Riches, where it just lays out right at that moment Henry Hill's life.
Manish Boy, Sunshine of Your Love, Baby I Love You, Life is But a Dream, that Layla outro at the piano exit, oh my god. But mainly the cocaine scene where 5 just god-tier songs just play. Just that Sunshine,
What is Life?
Manish Muddy Waters song, god. That's my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Well, yeah, I was going to bring up what our favorite scenes were. So I guess I'll just go into that now. What would you say your favorite scene in the movie is? Alright, well, Nick, you said that your favorite was the whole cocaine sequence.
Yeah.
Towards the end, which is,
Muddy
of
Waters.
course, an amazing scene in the movie. My favorite scene, while you're thinking, Gary, my favorite scene is at Tommy's mother's house, which is probably my favorite movie scene of all time. It's so simple, The dialogue is improvised for a vast majority of it, but somehow it's my favorite scene in the movie and probably of all time. This takes place right after Billy Bats is put in the trunk, and then they go and have dinner, and then they go to bury him. It's kind of in a weird spot in the movie. This had them eat dinner randomly, but it shows a lot about what the characters are, and this also allows for the viewer to look at Henry at this moment, because this is really where you kind of see him thinking things over, like when Tommy's mother keeps asking him, why are you so quiet?
How's your friend Henry there? Henry, what's the matter? You don't talk too much.
What you talking over? Being quiet for?
You don't eat much, you don't talk much.
I'm just listening.
What's the matter, something wrong with you? You remind me of when we were kids, compadres used to visit one another. And there was this man, he would never talk, he would just sit there all night and not say a word. So they said to him, what's the matter, compadre? Don't you talk? Don't you say anything? He says, what am I going to say? That my wife 2 times me? So she says to him, shut up, you're always talking.
And Henry is just kind of sitting there. I think that's also an important part to have there. But the movie kind of has that feeling of family and having the characters be conflicted with their values. So having them be such terrible people, and Joe Pesci, who just practically killed somebody, automatically go back and then talk about how much he loves his mother. It's a contrast that you see in other movies, like The Godfather. Like if you look at the church sequences, it just has a bigger impact, I think, because of how the characters interact with each other. And you look at a short film that Scorsese made called Italian American, which is a really great short film of him just interviewing his parents, and it's practically the same thing. And I think that's something that you look at to how real the movie is, because all the dialogue feels very natural going off of each other. It feels very fluid, like you were saying, Nick. The writing is just that good, and I think that that's probably my favorite scene in the movie.
You know, I keep going back to, for my favorite scene, I just keep thinking of the, I know this might sound terrible, but the scene with Spider, because...
yeah, it's probably my second favorite.
Yeah, because I just remember, like, watching it and being just so, like, what's the word? Like, so...
You kind of feel
captivated.
like... Yeah, you kind of feel like you're in the spot
like you're there.
of the gangsters at the moment, especially Henry, and even some of the other gangsters around there, because that is the moment, both for Henry and the viewer, where you think... oh shit, he just killed Spider.
Yeah.
And you feel
over
right
something
in the
so
exact,
insignificant too.
And you feel exactly in that spot as Henry.
Mm-hmm.
It's so jarring when it happens. I'll never be able to remember how I felt when I first saw that, because I don't remember really. But for people who first see it, you're laughing along, because for the rest of the movie, even beforehand, when Joe Pesci is making fun of the owner of the restaurant, and the whole funny how sequence, you're used to seeing Joe Pesci make these offhand jokes and just making fun of people, like people just do in everyday conversation.
That's just like,
but in this spot,
shoot him.
he just shoots him and kills him.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, oh wait, what am I laughing at? Should I be on this guy's side? What's your favorite performance in the movie?
Ray Liotta.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, Joe Pesci for me too.
Everybody says like Joe Pesci, you two will say Joe Pesci, yes, Joe Pesci kills it. But Ray Liotta just kind of took Henry Hill and just made him something else.
I will say that he's very undervalued in this movie when people look at it. Just because De Niro is such like that commanding force and he is that big star, and Joe Pesci is the one who just everyone loves because he's so funny in it. But Ray Liotta really needs to be looked at how much he holds the movie together.
Yeah.
Because he is that glue of the movie that offers a perspective for the person that's watching into the life of the gangsters.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, definitely. Because Ray Liotta in this film is just so insanely good. He's like so calm, yet like you're kind of thinking in his head like he's slowly questioning what is kind of going on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the power of Ray Liotta.
Yeah, I think also, even if you may not realize it and they don't show it explicitly, it kind of is a ticking time bomb. It's just not shown like that until it really happens. But after Spider gets killed and after Billy Bats gets killed, I mean, which are both like the turning points, then from that point on, it's kind of like a ticking time bomb. Everything from that point on, you start questioning everything happening in the movie and who you can trust. And that really, again, offers a lot of insight into the characters. And you kind of already said this again, but this is another thing I was going to bring up. What's your favorite usage of music in the movie?
Well, I'm coming from a bias here. I love the whole Beyond the Sea sequence.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like one of my favorite songs, but it's just so fun. Like, I love that sequence.
I would probably say the Layla interlude, because that is one of Clapton's best songs, and it's used so well there. And when you listen, I can't listen to the song anymore without hearing the voiceover in my head, which is unfortunate and not unfortunate at the same time, because it works so great into the movie. And every other piece of music is just works so perfectly, from when it goes from like the Tony Bennett to the doo-wop, and then into all the late 60s and early 70s rock. It all feels like a development of where the movie is going in terms of Henry's life and in terms of just the events happening around him.
You know, I almost feel like if you just listen to the song choices, you know what point of the story it's in. That's what's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, for me too.
If you were just to listen to the soundtrack, you can almost play the movie in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I also just gotta take it on the scene of "Give Me Shelters" when he's first doing the cocaine, and "Give Me Shelter" goes on. My God.
Yeah,
That
that's definitely up there. I would say probably top 3. And then like even
when he's doing
the song Atlantis, when Joe Pesci's killing Billy Bats, that part is used really well too.
Yeah, no, and then the whole like 5 songs, like "Sunshine of Your Love," "Baby I Love You," "Managed Boy" by Muddy Waters. I don't know why I'm talking about Muddy Waters, but it's so much better. God, I love Muddy Waters.
And then, I mean, even like that cover of "My Way" at the end, I think that's a really good ender to the movie. If you know the lyrics of "My Way" and all of that. So, what would you say maybe is your favorite shot of the movie?
I mean, the whole opening with like all the like red mist is just so iconic and so recognizable, and I think that's such a clever visual.
Yeah,
it just works so well with the movie, and I think that's always what I think of when I think of Goodfellas, like that shot, like where you see like the red mist everywhere, and I just love it.
Zooming close up on his face.
Yeah.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
For mine, it's kind of the cliche choice, but it's the Copacabana shot, which is my favorite, because it's so iconic for a reason, just like the shot of him behind the car with the car lights on him. And the Copacabana shot, there's this really great video that came out on the Cinefix YouTube channel. They're one of the best YouTube channels if you want to watch videos about filmmaking. And they made a really great video analyzing that whole thing. And it really does make you feel like you're being toured around by Henry Hill himself. And I think that's really the most important part. And Scorsese said how when he was shooting that scene, there was one part where if you can remember, one of the waiters is bringing a table and it's like flying in the air. It kind of looks like when he's bringing the table for Henry and Karen. They didn't do that initially, but Scorsese jumped in and said you need to do it like that because that's how he saw it when he had experienced that in real life. So again, it's just, I don't think anyone else could have directed this movie, not just not as well as Scorsese, but just in general. Like if you were to say a Coppola, maybe Coppola because of the subject matter, but I don't think he can bring that type of energy to the movie like Scorsese does.
I think my favorite shot will probably be the Layla scene, and then like the cars going to the garage, and then it just zooms out to the whole house. I think that shot is fantastic, and I think it adds so much to the film.
Another one, actually, this one just came to mind that I really like was the one where Karen's pointing a gun directly to the screen.
Definitely.
Yeah, when Henry wakes up. Like, that's such a powerful thing. Like, you just see, like, a gun pointing to you. And it's just, that's
another
such a
example of
clever,
you being in Henry's
great
situation.
scene.
Yeah. No, that's but that's also another example of how only Scorsese really could have done that. Directed that scene, put the camera like that, and have it just work so effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, we haven't really brought that up yet about Karen. I feel like she's a pretty big part of this movie, too.
That's
like
why I made sure to include her in the intro when I said who this movie was starring, because she's extremely, again, like Ray Liotta, but even more so undervalued in this movie.
Yeah, she's such a big part that no one really ever gives credit to.
Absolutely.
How she never wants to become like the wives that she sees earlier on, and she ultimately becomes just that.
Mm-hmm.
Or even like, it's so sad to see too, like with like her relationship with like her mom and stuff, when she comes back late and they're like freaking out. And that's like the last time you see the mom until the very end.
Yeah. Or even, I think probably what's kind of the initiation scene, you could say, at the wedding is a really important moment for Karen, because I think that the camera kind of focuses itself on Karen in that moment and how much she's overwhelmed, and that's kind of, if you want to say, a turning point for her character is at that wedding scene.
The bag. What? What bag? The bag with all the envelopes, all the money.
Don't worry about that. Nobody's gonna steal that here.
Okay.
Okay.
It's interesting to me because she's so important. Like she's the only other character that has narration in this movie. It's so interesting, just like how I would say she's maybe even like the second main character. You could argue it, but I think that she is.
Yeah, when you look at the story in terms of it revolving around Henry Hill's life, she's definitely, I think, more of a main character than Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, because they're kind of just like the instigators.
Yeah. And one more thing that I want to bring up is Scorsese's camera work in this is also phenomenal, because now I'm starting to appreciate camera work a little more. Now that I'm taking photography, I'm appreciating more just how clever you have to be to get certain shots, whether it be just regular photo or video. I love how in this movie there's long shots, and then like with the cocaine stuff, it's just like super fast-paced and quick camera movements, and that's like, you know what you're doing.
That's really a lot of credit needs to go to the editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, who edits all of Scorsese's movies to this day. She brings so much to the movie, and that's why in the filmmaking community she's known as one of the best editors of all time. And editing is a weird thing, because that's something I can never really get. That's like the only thing that I can't get down when looking at filmmaking, because when watching a movie I can tell this is good writing, this is good directing, this is good cinematography. I can't always tell if it's good editing, except for if it's like an Edgar Wright movie where it's right in front of your face, but I can't ever get that down to really notice what is great editing as opposed to, like, I can tell like really bad editing, but good editing, great editing, it's hard to tell a difference. But with Thelma Schoonmaker in Goodfellas, you can really make that distinction.
I would say it's like good editing is something that almost adds to the scene. It can't really take away from what's going on. And second of all, it's supposed to like heighten or almost like add to the scene. It's not supposed to be like the main focus. It's supposed to like elevate it or do something. So I guess as long as it accomplishes that, I think that's what makes it good editing. But if it just sticks out like a sore thumb, then
yeah,
obvious that it's not really well done.
And also, the director has a lot of say in the editing process, so that's also kind of why I feel a little not as educated on that. But other than that, I think that all the shots in the movie, the way they're put together, are all perfectly done. This is definitely a movie that you cannot get tired of watching over and over. It's also a movie that I think that, similar to The Godfather, again, is that I think it will last to all generations. All generations can appreciate this movie because it has something really for everyone.
This, to me, it's kind of just like the high bar or like the benchmark for how to write a decent film, and just like how to write good characters, how to write funny dialogue in a dramatic scene, how to like pace. This is one of those films where if you think The Godfather's too slow, you will like Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Thank you, cinematography class, for that.
Well, kind of like what you were saying, it's great, but I guess it depends on who you are. It could be like a little bit of a difficult watch because there are some really intense scenes in it, but
it at least lets you know from the start, like Joe Pesci stabbing him in the trunk.
You know what it is. Yeah, that's like what I was saying earlier. Like, you already know what it's going to be. Even though it can be like really violent and stuff, I don't think it's enough to make it like unwatchable. You know, like the characters and stories just too good to just skip it because of the violence.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I have to go back just one last time before we wrap up to the opening scene, because there's a lot of choices made that show where the characters are in that moment. You got Joe Pesci in the back, and then you got Robert De Niro in the front. I believe he's sleeping in the passenger seat. But Ray Liotta's driving, and that's a really important choice there made by Scorsese to have him in the driver's seat, because he is in the driver's seat in that moment in his life, and it's his decision what he's going to do. And when they eventually have to bury him, that is the point where you see his character make that step over. Alright, so that'll do it for our Goodfellas episode. Thank you for listening.
Bye.